Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob here, and today I'm talking about The Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. And I know that's not the usual type of book that I cover on this channel, but I'm in a book club and this is one of the books we just finished reading, and I have a lot to say about it, so I felt like it would be a waste not to do a video on it. But if you are someone that is subscribed to my channel to hear about, sword and sorcery books or historical fiction or horror books or science fiction, any of that stuff, bear in mind that this is not really that kind of book. That being said, it is pretty dark at times, and I love a mystery, any type of mystery. If a book has even a mystery as a subplot, I am usually in 100% because I want to know, how the mystery is solved. I want to get to the end of it, and that's kind of how it was with this. Follows Pippa, who is basically chosen her senior project, which I don't think they use the term senior. I kind of forget the terms they use because they are in England or the United Kingdom, and a lot of the things didn't really translate to American school systems, if that makes sense. So there was some of the ways they would say things, I'd be like, oh well, that's this and this. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. She's doing a project on the town murder. She is trying to prove that Sal Singh did not kill his girlfriend, Andy Bell, which the entire town is convinced that he did. Now, in the town's defense, while for the most part a lot of the people are kind of racist, as Sal Singh comes from one of the only Indian families in their town, there also is the fact that blood was found in his car, and he had a suicide note because he killed himself. So he had a suicide note which stated that he did it and he was sorry. But Pippa does not believe this and sets to work to prove it wrong for her senior project. And I will say that if solving a murder could have been my senior project, I think my grade point average would have been a bit different in high school, because that sounds way more exciting than any of the things we were offered for any class. But yeah, so she kind of starts to question everybody that was involved with it, from the police to Andy's friends, and it doesn't take very long for some people's stories to start to unravel. And I think that was one of the more interesting things about this book, because it really wasn't her just figuring everything out Nancy Drew style. A lot of it was her figuring things out through interviews, which I thought was way more believable. And even though, we are dealing with a teenager that's solving a murder, it seemed a lot more feasible because she wasn't, looking at forensic evidence and all this types of stuff that would probably be beyond her education at that point. She's just asking people questions and catching them in lies, which I would assume probably actually happens a lot in crimes when you're dealing with a whole bunch of people that are trying to cover their own asses, especially when you're talking about an event that happened, 5 or 6 years ago at this point, and people maybe are a bit forgetful about the things they aren't supposed to say, or maybe they didn't say at the time, so they are tripping over themselves because they haven't given it much thought anymore. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I think it made Pippa a very believable character, which was a lot of fun, because a lot of times, in books like this, especially in young adult fiction, we tend to get characters that are that can just kind of do everything, right? They're basically superheroes. They're kid geniuses with straight A's that can do backflips because they quit gymnastics. You know what I mean? It's a lot of times it's just a bit too much. But yeah, that's not what we've got here. Pippa is a pretty believable character, and about the way she goes about things. Now, this is where I'm going to get into a bit of spoiler territory, because she also didn't make a whole lot of sense. There is a point in the book where she destroys all of her evidence, which would have gotten Sal Singh off the hook, because the killer, who doesn't want her, releasing anything, has kidnapped her dog, and the killer obviously kills her dog anyway. And that's what really kind of made me mad, because A, dog died, but B, also when she starts to get threatened by the killer, and kind of starts to suspect all these people around her of these like nefarious things, at no point does she tell her parents or go to the cops, which is like the most insane thing to me, because what teenager is like, oh yeah, I'm probably going to be able to make a deal with this person who got away with a murder for 5 years. They definitely won't just kill me, so I'm not going to tell my parents or any authority figure around me because I don't want them to worry. And which, to be honest, she doesn't really justify it, more than at one point I think she says, like, I don't want to put them in danger, which is kind of ridiculous considering the fact that, like, the killer actually was in her house snooping at one point, and, kind of went through her stuff and left a threatening message on her computer. So her parents were already in danger. Everyone in that house was, right? And at no point did she feel like she needed to mention that, oh yeah, this person that I think murdered a local girl and got away with it has been in our house, snooping through our things. So she constantly, like, makes herself out to be a good person who does, like, the right thing, and that's why she's trying to solve this, because it's not right what happened, and that it's not right that everyone thinks, like, Sal did it and that's his legacy, because he didn't do it and she knows it because he was a good guy. But she also is really quick to cover for people that are doing bad things, like her friend's sister Naomi, who made up, and this is another spoiler, she made up a not an alibi, but like the reverse of an alibi, right? She originally was Sal Singh's alibi. He was with his friends that night, but she said, and some other friends said, that he wasn't, because they had all left a club drinking and hit a guy and paralyzed him for life. And instead of basically making anyone be accountable for this horrific crime that has terribly altered somebody's life to the point that, like, this guy is in a wheelchair forever, Pippa decides not to take the evidence to the police, which she could have at that point, and cleared Sal's name enough to reopen the case without her having to, like, find an alternative way and find the killer, right? Because they already had evidence. They could prove that his alibi was in fact an alibi, and he was nowhere near the scene of the crime. But she decides to keep covering for her friend's older sister, because she's like, well, they're like family to me. Which is insane to me. If you are someone that, like, your sense of justice is so strong that you are solving your town's, this, like, small town crime that everyone wants no one to talk about, essentially, that, like, you are 100% okay with, all of these people not getting in trouble for ruining this other person's life, which I think kind of shows a different side of Pippa, because, like, on the one hand, she wants to prove Sal's innocent because she knew Sal, but on the other hand, she could give two shits about this now paralyzed person. And it kind of makes me feel like it was because, she didn't know him, so it didn't matter as much to her. Whereas she knew, Naomi, so she was going to cover for her, which I think not really good person behavior, right? Like, that's pretty shitty behavior all around. Especially, like, Naomi wasn't behind the wheel, and the person that was behind the wheel, Max, wasn't a good dude anyway. Like, he probably should have been in jail, and later does go, but for a different reason, which is another spoiler. We are deep in spoiler territory. The next thing that I think really kind of got me about this book, and it didn't annoy me, but I just, like, I don't know why you're doing this, was, and this is once again a spoiler, she discovers that there's not, in fact, one person, you know, that has committed a crime, but two people. The first person that she thought killed Andy, I'm not going to give away who it is, but the first person that she thought killed Andy ended up not killing Andy and has just kept a random person hostage in their house because they thought it was Andy this whole time. And the person that, and which leads her to figure out who did kill Andy, but in both instances, she gets there before the police. In the first instance, she does call the police before she arrives, which is good. But what's crazy to me is, in both occasions, this teenager decides to confront these violent offenders one-on-one, and, you know, in one case, gives them a chance to flee. Which was really kind of insane behavior, because, look, if you've committed a crime like that, like, there's not a lot of places you can flee. I mean, especially, like, in the modern world, like, by the time you get in your car and make it out of town, the police have probably already put a block on your passport. And, you know, I really like watching true crime, and contrary to popular belief, a lot of criminals don't have a vast, like, or at least a lot of, like, spur-of-the-moment crimes of passion criminals who, like, murder someone and then just get away with it for a long time. They're usually not, like, criminal masterminds. They just were able to get away with this one specific crime. So it's not like they have, like, fake passports and, like, all this thing, you know, like, all this stuff that, like, get them out of the country. So I thought that was really weird. But yeah, other than that, I really like this book. And that's probably all the spoilers I'm going to give. I just thought it was... Oh, no. I'm going to give one more, because even at the end, when all the killers are brought to justice, and then the person who was driving the car, when they paralyzed that person, was brought to justice, there still is, like, not that much information about the hit and run. Like, none of them talk about the hit and run that left this guy, like, paralyzed. Like, Naomi still gets off scot-free, and they're kind of like, oh, well, she's been having a tough time of it because the guilt's been eating her. And I'm like, well, good. They describe this guy as being, like, paralyzed from the neck down for the rest of his life. Like, you've essentially, you know, killed that person in a way. It's like, you should still probably be punished for that. Like, yeah, you weren't driving, but you could at least do some community service or something. Like, you should at least have to say, oh, yeah, I was in the car. We did this thing. Like, let's all kind of be held a little bit accountable for this one crime. But that doesn't really happen. Instead, they're all just happy-go-lucky because they cleared Sal's name, and they got the two people that, you know, one who framed him and the other who actually committed the murder, end up going to jail. So I guess it's just happily ever after, which I thought was kind of weird. I do think I'm going to read the next book in the series, because it does look like it's going to be a trilogy, because it does kind of feel like it's all wrapped up. So I am kind of wondering where the next book is going to go. Hopefully we'll read it in book club, but who knows? We haven't picked our next book yet. But yeah, I did enjoy this book. I did like Pippa as an investigator, even though some of her choices were super infuriating. I also liked the character of Ravi, who is Sal's brother, you know, and how, like, he comes along in the book and helps out a bunch. I found all the characters, even the killers, to be, like, pretty believable, because they were kind of delusional, and then some of them were not delusional and were just like, hey, this bad thing happened and someone had to be punished for it, so I did this thing. And very much, like, as someone that watches a lot of true crime shows, they all felt like believable, they felt like believable characters. Like, it made me feel that the author probably did a lot of research for the book, or is also just a true crime junkie. Because yeah, everyone felt believable. The interviews felt believable. Like, even like, because they would be mid-interview, and then the person would be like, you know what, I don't want to talk about this anymore. This is uncomfortable. I'm gonna leave. And I really liked that. And I am excited to kind of read the next book to see what the next mystery is, or to see if it's a continuation of the first mystery. But yeah, I will still be covering, obviously, the horror and all the other books that you guys subscribe to the channel for. This is just a book club read. If I do read the other books and like them, I will probably throw a video up too, since it is a trilogy. But if you did read this book, liked this book, want to comment on this book, drop a comment. Also, let me know if there's any book series that are kind of like this, because I did enjoy this format of investigation in the book, and I thought that was fun. Yeah, other than that, as always, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.